I'm here with Candie Cooper, who always has super fun ideas. So what are we making today, Candie?
Thanks, Julie. We are making keychains for him or her today.
Great, and so how are we gonna get started?
Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is emboss some leather. So this leather's kind of boring in our world, Julie. We need to texture it.
So when you're embossing leather and you're looking for what kind of leather to emboss, are you looking for anything in particular?
Yes, so this is a special leather called veg tan leather.
Okay.
It's just how the hide's been treated. So you can see it's pretty thick. It comes in different weights. You
kind of a very smooth finish, I noticed.
Yes, you kind of want to pay attention to the weight. This is a little bit thinner.
Okay.
And we're going to actually use just a paper embosser.
I just have to ask you a question because I am very used to with embossing folders, you fold it around something, but I notice you're not doing that.
No, because we're going to do a long cuff.
So you actually don't need the back. I always thought you needed the back part so it would press between both sides, but you're saying you don't.
We're imprinting this thing. Yeah, so just lay that on there. And what I did was mist it a little bit with water because you want to soften the surface of your leather so that you get a nice imprint. And then you're just going to roll it on through.
Now the way that embossing works, right, is pressure, which is why you've created this sandwich where you have the plate, the embossing folder, and then the piece of plastic on top.
Yes, and you'll notice I'm using an extra long piece of plastic on top because I'm using the full length of the embossing folder. But
okay,
look at that.
Shut up. I can't even believe that this is the same piece of leather.
Isn't that exciting?
Is this permanent in here? Like it's not going to come out?
It's not. That's the magic of veg tan leather. You know, you've seen the Western tooled purses and all of that.
Yeah, and that takes forever. And what if this gets wet though? Does it come out then?
Nope. It's pretty much in there. Once it dries, like obviously if you soaked it, it would,
I can't believe how deep this is. I mean, that's so cool.
It's beautiful.
I can see it's the same pattern with one is debossed, meaning it's pushed in, and one is embossed, or it's kind of raised, so you get like the basket weave and the opposite.
Right.
So cool.
It's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So now we're gonna cut our little strip. This is normally a bracelet cuff die, but we're gonna actually roll it around so that we make the keychain.
And I do just want to point out, because you're sort of conserving your leather here, you're very careful about where you place it, and that's because you're using a magnetic platform, right? So you can be careful like that.
Right, you can totally be careful like that. And so when you roll this thing through on your different, we shifted platforms and all of that, roll it through and that little
have a tongue depressor.
pieces, yeah, you have a tongue depressor,
right? But that's so cool, and I love how you're getting both the, you know, debossed and the embossed sides on the same piece. It's just, it's really incredible.
I'm so glad you like it because I like it. I think this is one of the best things ever. So now you're going to match up like whatever keychain finding you want, and you want to kind of roll it around both sides and think about where am I going to put my rivet to hold this guy all together, because I love those loop keychains.
So people who aren't familiar, a rivet is going to be like a staple or a brad. I mean, it's the thing that is holding everything together. So you're actually punching through 3 layers of the leather now.
I'm going to try.
Okay. Does this require a lot of hand strength? Do you have to be really strong to do this?
I think what is best is if you try to get through the first layer.
Okay.
And then you can always open it up and get your first mark and then go through. So no, it doesn't, because this is a special leather punch that has a lot of torque on it. So now I have almost all of my holes. I got one more that I need to pop out.
So I see, if it doesn't come out all the way, you could always just use the tool again because you know where it's placed. You don't have to worry about it too much.
Right. So now, there it comes. Now we're gonna dye it with a special, this is like a water stain dye.
I was actually wondering if this was all the same leather or if this was actually like just a different color of leather.
No, and there's a lot of, I mean, you could acrylic paint it too if you don't wanna go to the dye.
And I noticed you're putting on gloves. Is there anything like safety-wise we need to know about dyes as opposed to paints?
I just think this is a stain.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
So your hands will be brown after this.
Totally.
Okay.
So we're just gonna use, like I just chop up a bunch of little sponges. And
I noticed that you sprayed it with water. Is it important that it's damp?
It just, I feel like the dye goes, it just helps distribute the dye.
Okay.
And then what you're gonna do is put on a generous amount, and you wanna do the edges, you wanna do everything,
Do you do the back of it?
I do the back,
okay,
everything.
And you're rubbing in a circle up and down, does it matter?
Yeah, because if you leave a streak, that streak is gonna show up.
So what you see is what you get 100%. And if you added more layers, would it get darker?
Yes, and you could put antiquing agents on it. This is just, the world is your oyster. But like I said, you could dye it and then acrylic paint it. You could acrylic paint it, dye over top. This is about layers.
You know what I like so much is because you're staining it after embossing, what's happening is that it's distributing unevenly into the cracks and the niches and the sort of darker parts.
Right. Right.
And then how long does that take to dry?
It's pretty fast, but I mean, you need to give it, well, I don't know, a couple hours. Like and if you want to add more, you can. You know what I mean? If you wanted to get, like this one has some streaks, but we're making this kind of distress, so I'm okay with some streaks.
Is that just a regular sanding block?
This is a 220 sanding block. I think I got it in the automotive section of the store.
And the 220 refers to the grit.
That's right, yeah. And so all I'm doing now, again, circular motion, is removing just the edges, the high points, the whatever. This is a different pattern, so it's showing up a little bit differently. But the sanding takes away the dye and reveals that cool veg tan leather underneath.
Cool. And now, does this remove any finish from the leather and you need to worry about refinishing it or anything like that?
You could go back over it with a dye if you don't like it, though.
Okay.
Like if you're like, dang, I sanded that and it doesn't look great, go back
just
over it.
Just add more dye. I like it. You can just keep going through.
That's right. Okay, so now we're gonna pick out, I've got some decorative rivets that are just a 2-part rivet. It screws together. I'm using this little swivel again from the hardware store. Like, no big deal. And then the reason you punch your holes though first, I didn't mention this earlier, is that, you wanna put this in the right spot, is so that the dye covers up your edges. You know what I mean? You don't wanna leave exposed holes. Not that you'll see them, but just in case.
I see what you're saying, so that in case you were able to see any of it, all of that color is still actually in the hole, and it's not like you're exposing a totally different color of leather.
Bingo.
Okay. Now, when you push it through the hole, I noticed that you flipped it over to make it a little easier for yourself to see exactly where that the shaft of the rivet is going.
You betcha. And this is probably the hardest part of the project, is trying to get this. Like I said, leather comes in different thicknesses, but trying to get this screw to go all the way through those thick layers. So now that it's together,
oh, look at
you
that.
have this cute little bear. And then if you want to preserve your finish, you want to grab, you probably have tons of this stuff, just an acrylic varnish.
So it's interesting, so you actually varnish it after you have the rivet on. I would have thought that you might do it before.
You could, but I like that this kind of preserves the shape, and it's just your final step. Do your edges and then just finish by sealing the whole thing. You really see how that makes the colors pop too.
It does, and if we look at the finished ones, they're absolutely beautiful, and I see that it's not just like the dark leather that you've been using, but all kinds of different colors, and you even have some larger sized ones that are made slightly differently, right?
Yeah, so that's a big one that I slashed some like acrylic paint on it. But you always want to seal it with this acrylic varnish if you want to preserve your finish.
I was going to say, especially because these are going to get used in and out of your pocket and all of that stuff. This is great, Candie. I can't wait to try my hand at embossing some leather.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks so much.